Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's training session here at Sundown AI. Once again, this is Ingrid, and today we'll be going over what intents are and how to add intents to our user interface to get Chloe trained. So to get started, let's first review what intents are. So an intent basically is a decision tree that we're creating on different use cases that we receive from different communication channels. So for today's example, we're going to be working with a chat, but the intents work the same way for any type of channel. It could be, the emails, it could be tickets that have a different formatting. Every single dialogue that's added to the user interface needs to have an intent decision tree created to go along with it. So for today's example, I've created this sample chat. It's a very simple chat, and we're just going to go through how it is that we add these intents. The intents are basically what going to tell Chloe what to do when a request is received. So the very first intent is always going to be based on what the client is requesting. So to give you an example, they contact you and they say, hi, I need some issues with resetting my password. That would be the main reason why the customer is contacting the company in the first place. So our first intent would be labeled based on that first request, which in this case could be something such as forgot password or reset password. Since every single chat or dialogue has to be divided with different QA pairs, as you can see here, each question and answer pair has to have an assigned intent to it. So for chats that are longer, for emails, it may not be as complex unless there's several responses that were given to the same email. Then we do need to create separate intents based on what the reason of each, and based on the content of each email. But with chats, it's a matter of grabbing that entire chat and dividing it into the QA pairs so that we could assign specific intents to it. So let's start with the first one. It says, "Hi, can you help me?" And then Chloe is saying, "Thank you for contacting us. How can we help you?" So since I first mentioned that the very first intent has to be based on what the client is saying, then what I did is I assigned an intent using the word introduction. So whenever somebody comes to the site and says, "Hi, I need help," or "Can you assist me with this," or I'm looking for a demo, etc., all that could be considered as an introduction. Then my second question and answer pair all the way to the rest of the end of my chat, which leaves us with 3 more intents that we need to assign. These are going to be assigned based on what Chloe needs to respond. So let's go ahead and just recap that one more time. So our very first intent is going to be based on what the client first sends us. So if they say, "Hi, I need help," this intent is going to be labeled introduction because it's consistent to what the client is telling us first of all. Right after the very first QA pair and all the way to the end of the rest of the QA pairs, it needs to be labeled based on what Chloe needs to respond. So it's going to be the other way around. Here the customer is saying, "What are the different ways to pay the bill?" And then Chloe needs to reply, "Sure, I can help you with that. You can pay bills from iBanking account by calling our hotline or by visiting our branch." So what she's doing is pretty much giving some payment options because they're asking, "How do I pay a bill?" She gives an answer to what those options are. So I've added the intent as payment options. Then the customer is saying, "Okay, thanks. Is there anything else that I could assist you with today?" And we assign additional assistance because in this case, Chloe already gave a resolution, and the next step in my decision tree is going to be to offer additional assistance so that I can then proceed with either assisting or branding the chat in this case. So the customer says, "Yes, I would like to make the payment now." And then Chloe's saying, "Sure, I will route your request to an agent." So in this case, it's an escalation, and I added my intent as an escalation. Now, you may be wondering why I'm working this on the Excel, and all this needs to be labeled directly on our user interface. But I do find it easier to identify my intent decision trees, especially if you're working with chats, if I do it first of all, on an Excel. So what I like to do is I like to grab at least 3 to 5 main use cases and lay down what the main intents would be. If I have a lot of chats to work with or a lot of dialogues, there's going to come a point where a lot of these intents are going to be repeated on each dialogue. So you'll constantly, be noticing that it's going to be less and less needed to add newer intents. You're already going to have them all defined in your user interface. This is why I like to start with at least 3 to 5 chats, get them first on an Excel, and then add those directly to my user interface. So let's proceed with how to add the intents on the user interface. So right now I have to add these 4 so that I could label this chat right here. And it's very simple. All I have to do is go to my user interface, then I'm going to click on the intent section. And the label that I had mentioned would be the first one is introduction, and then you could use the same one for description unless you want to add something different. It's just good to add a description if you're going to have more than one team members working on the account, just so that they all know what each and every intent is tended to be used for. And then all you have to do is go ahead and click on add, and you'll notice the intent automatically added to the user interface. So it's right here, introduction. And then I could edit, I could delete it. Now I'll go ahead and proceed with adding the other 3 intents. Same process, just type in the name, hit plus. Now we're going to do the additional assistance. This is very easy. It's just a matter of keeping track what the intents are going to be used for. And the last one, which is escalation. And again, just hit the plus line. Now I want to add that dialog to my user interface because I don't yet have it. So let me go ahead and do that. And what I first need to do to upload this chat is I need to remove the intents from my Excel because I don't want this to be imported. It's gonna ruin the format of my chat. So in order for me to import this, the first row always needs to have either a title or it could be blank. But if you're going to upload your chat, you need to make sure that you leave one row above the chat that needs to be imported. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and download this as a CSV file, and I will get this added to the user interface so that you could see how we are to label the intents directly on our user interface. So I'm going to go to my downloads, and it's right here. And you'll notice how it got added right here. So to label my intents, I go to my training section. And as I mentioned before, we need to label every single QA pair within the chat. So now that we're within the training section, as I mentioned before, we need to label every single QA pair within that dialog and add that intent. So we're going to do exactly what we just reviewed on the Excel file, except that now we're going to do it directly on the user interface. So to do this, it's very simple. It's just a click of a button. So we had said that the first intent is based on what the client is requesting. So, hi, can you help me? This is considered an introduction. So I click on the introduction and then I click on submit so that my changes could be made. Then it says what are the different ways to pay the bill. And then this is where Chloe needs to give the payment options. So I click on payment options, hit submit. Is there anything else that I could assist you with today? We said was additional assistance. I click on it, hit submit, and same thing with the last one, which we had said is an escalation, and I hit on submit. And that's it. You could see that all of them have been completed. If I go back to my chat and I scroll all the way down, you'll be able to see the intents right here. See? And that's pretty much it. Now, just a few things to add before I let everyone go. So just so we're clear on the intents, there's a few things that you also need to know. You could have more than 2 intents per QA pair. There are some cases where, there's 2 different types of information that's either being asked or that's being provided. So you can use more than 1 intent. We try to keep them as simple as possible just so that we can create a very clean graph and a very clean decision tree, which is, pretty much giving Chloe the steps that she needs to find the quickest resolution to a problem. Then another thing is that the intents are not always going to be the same. So based on the use case, the intents could be different, and that's okay. Just make sure that you assign the proper intents to each QA pair. And finally, one more thing, and we have to be very careful with this, is that if we do create an intent and it has to serve a specific response or question, then we need to avoid trying to create similar intents with similar responses or with different responses. So for example, for payment options, we want to make sure that the answers are going to be consistent to what that intent is, and that we don't offer different answers because it's something that could confuse the system. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or if you need assistance at any point on setting up your account and assigning the intents, feel free to reach out to us at info@sundown.ai, or you could also visit our website and contact us directly through our contact submission forms or additional communication sources. Once again, thank you very much. I hope this has been useful for you, and I wish you all a wonderful day.